G'day and welcome to the Noob Spearo podcast wherever you are in the world. I'm your host, Turbo, and more importantly, you are a passionate Spearo that wants to become a safer, more sustainable, more selective, and just an all-round better underwater hunter. And that's what we do here at the Noob Spearo podcast. We interview the world's best Spearos and pump them for their tips, tricks, and advice. That is such a mouthful, so that we can all get better at spearfishing. Now, today's no different. Today, we have an absolute legend on the line with us. We're talking with none other than South African Kevin Daly. Now, Kevin Daly has speared every part of the globe pretty much. He's done South Africa, Australia, the Mediterranean, the UK, just to name a few. And he's an absolute treasure trove of information. Now, we talked to Kevin about comp diving and why he's such an effective comp diver over there in the UK. We talk about those cold water UK species. We talked to him about his Spanish mackerel world record that he held for quite some time. And that was a 36.8 kg Spanish mackerel that he shot there in South Africa. We also talked to him about shooting those flighty dentex in Europe. So he's done it all, and we ask all the right questions today. I'm pretty happy with this episode. We get a lot of good information out of him, a lot of good tips. I won't waste any more of your time. Let's throw it over to Shrek and get into today's episode with Kevin Daly.
Guys, Spearing Magazine joined the Noob Spearo podcast. They've got some of the best contributors in the world. They've got stories from all corners of the globe. And if you're interested in contributing something, you can head along to spearingmagazine.com. Head up there to the top right corner, get into the menu, and there's become a contributor to Spearing Magazine. Now, some of the guests on our show have been contributors, or they regularly contribute. We've had Jessica Cripps, Michael Takash, and Ted Hardy contributes a regular section. It's probably the best quality magazine, pound for pound, in the world. So get in there, check out the photography. It's an awesome heavyweight magazine. You can also get the digital edition. So head over to spearingmagazine.com to learn a bit more. Join them on social, Facebook, Insta, or YouTube.
Guys, if you're in need of some new equipment, maybe a new gun, some fins, or anything else you can think of, check out spearfishing.com.au. That's the online store for Adreno. They have got a huge range of gear, anything you could ever think of. And not only that, if you use the code NoobSpearo at checkout, so go to checkout, it'll say enter code, put in NoobSpearo, and you'll save yourself $20 on all purchases over $200. So do yourself a favour, get on to spearfishing.com.au, save yourself some money and get some great gear.
G'day Noobers, welcome to the Noob Spearo podcast. You're joining Turbo and Kung Fu Panda in studio as we interview Kevin Daly. He's a South African now residing in the UK. He's the 6 times UK champion, and it's an absolute pleasure to have him join us today. He's finished a long shift at work and he's tucked up in an Airbnb somewhere over there in the UK. So welcome Kevin, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you Shrek, thank you Turbo, and hello listeners.
All right, Kev, give us a little bit of background about yourself. Where are you living in the UK now, and sort of maybe take us right back to the start of your spearfishing journey, which I believe was in Durban. Is that right?
No, it goes a bit further back than that. It goes to Cape Town. I currently am living in Portsmouth on the south coast of England. I moved to England in 2001, at the end of 2001. So I've been living in the country since then, most of the time in Portsmouth. But I started spearfishing, the first time I ever went spearfishing I was about 10 or 11. I went with my dad. That was in Cape Town. And he bought me a little wetsuit and a cheap little gun, which is about 50 centimeters long. And it took me out a few times. But it was really underpowered, this gun, and blunt as anything. So the spear just tended to like move the little fish out the way rather than actually go through them. So I think in the times that I went with my dad, I don't think we even landed a fish even.
Oh,
and
wow.
Then and so we got some. We used to get perlemoen or what you guys call abalone, or we got some crayfish as well. So we did that sort of thing. And then moved house and went to another city with my parents and didn't really get into spearfishing again until during university. And one of my good mates from Zimbabwe, he he went out and he decided he was going to give spearfishing a try. So he went out and he bought a gun. And he bought a gun that was bigger than the gun I had. So I thought, well, can't have that. So I went out and I bought an even bigger gun. And then we went out a few times and got into it then. And then eventually moved to Durban, and that's when it really took off for me, and used to go do it a lot,
So with the change to the bigger gun, you had a bit more success, and maybe the change in location. Was there more species available there?
Well, it was in Cape Town as well, where I was in university. To be honest, I couldn't load the bigger gun, so I still had to get my friend to actually load it for me, and then I'd try and shoot fish. And over time, I obviously learned how to load the gun, but I just had to get the technique right. But we were just getting into these little fish called Hottentot and Red Roman and that. Plentiful fish that are plentiful and easy to shoot. I suppose it's sort of the cannon fodder for most beginners. That sort of fish.
Yeah, and when you do start off, you still enjoy shooting them and eating them as well. So
yeah absolutely.
Cool.
The first one I actually got was pretty small, but I was absolutely stoked about it.
All right, and it sounds like from South Africa you moved to Australia for a little while, and I believe you held the world record for king mackerel or Spanish mackerel for a while.
Yeah, that's right. That was just before I moved to Australia. I was living in Durban for, I think, about 4 years. I lived there. It's fantastic diving up there. Of course, there's the sardine run, which occurs sort of midwinter, June, July. Around that time, the shoals of sardines migrate up the coast, and you get, if you're lucky enough, you get some game fish or whatever, and of course there's sharks and everything with it. So it's exciting stuff. And the one, I think it was 2000, I was diving with a friend of mine on the south coast, about 100 kilometers south of Durban. And we were swimming out and just doing a few downs, trying to find a hot spot with some fish. And we had seen a nice big Spanish mackerel the week before. So I was on the lookout for them. And I was just coming off the bottom and sort of looking around to make sure that nothing was around me. And then this big mackerel went and sort of came past around from the back, and I just luckily managed to get a shot in it. And I only had a tiny little float at the time. I mean, it was probably a 5-liter float or something. And so at that stage, I was also diving with a float line onto, attached to the gun. So I let the gun go, went up, grabbed the float, because I had my car keys on the float as well, and just gave me one hell of a tow. Eventually subdued that, and we got a couple of other fish, and got our bag of crayfish, and then decided to swim in case any of the sharks decided to take a bite, because it looked like it was going to be a big fish. So it ended up being the world record for a short period of time. It's been broken a number of times by guys in Australia, because I think on your west coast you get them.
So I was going to say that's a hotly contested record. Turbo did a write-up about it a few years ago, and I remember seeing your name in there, and I believe your fish was like nearly 37 kilo, and which is about 80 pound for some of our American listeners. Probably actually a bit more, isn't it, Kevin?
I think so. Yeah, I don't work in pounds myself, but it's something like that.
Yeah. That's a bloody good fish. Yeah, that would have taken you for a tow.
Yeah, it was like a bit of a wake. I even had to hold on to my mask, It's surprisingly, it's still actually the South African record. I mean, the world record went years ago, and it's been broken many times, as we mentioned. But it still happens to be the South African record. I'm quite pleased with that. It's surprising, because I mean, it's a nice big fish, but it's not that big. They do get quite a bit bigger. I know a few people, including myself, who have seen ones that are almost certainly bigger than that. But just to date, they haven't been landed in South African waters. So yeah, it still stands. Who would have known?
I did like your story when I read it, and it says on the records page that you shot the fish and you were stoked with it, but you still had to go and get your quota of crays before you went in. I like that.
Yeah.
It's really good.
For sure.
Yeah, I like that too, actually. It was just like, you had your priorities right, didn't you? So, it was awesome. So, okay, so you finished up university, you moved to Durban, you came over to Australia. What year was that? And I've got some notes here. It says you moved to Australia for a year and you were based in Cairns, and you were freediving for shells and sea cucumbers. So you actually worked over here, did you?
Yeah, that's right. I got a 1-year working visa, and I came over to Australia at the end of 2000 until the end of 2001. So I used my entire 1 year, and I worked for a company based in Cairns, and we went out on vessels from anywhere to a few days to about 6 weeks at the most. Going out from Cairns, and then on the longer trips, we'd need to come in somewhere, normally Gladstone or Townsville. And I was doing. I just stayed on the boats that were doing the free diving. They had a whole fleet of fishing vessels that they were doing the sea cucumbers and crayfish and hooker and stuff like that. But I wasn't really interested in that. I just stayed with the one boat that was doing the stuff on free diving. So went out for crayfish, for trochus shells, sea cucumbers, and then if you saw crayfish or whatever, you'd grab those. Those would go in the blast freezer as well. So it was an exciting time.
Cool.
Yeah, your breath hold must have been amazing at that stage.
Yeah, I was by far the fittest I have ever been and ever will be. That's for sure. I mean, you get up in the morning, you'd have a bit of breakfast, and then start working. There was normally a couple of tinnies that would be dragged behind the boat. So you'd go out in the tinny and then dive for a few hours until lunch, have lunch, process the shells for an hour or two, and then after lunch go back out for a few hours, and then in the evening process the shells. And then sometimes if there was a little bit of light left, you'd try and go for a spear before dinner and bed. So, I was putting many hours every day in the water.
That's a big day, all right. I'd be buggered after one day of that. Repeated days of bloody... I give you... With your ears, it brings an interesting point. How did your ears hold up with multiple days diving like that?
Yeah, I did have a few problems, and some of the guys had those candles that you put in your ear, and I had to do some syringing and stuff like that a couple of times. Because it wasn't great. But funnily enough, the skipper that I was always working for, he was a born again Christian bloke. You'd try and give us Sunday off, and then we could do a bit of spearing. But most of the time we were a bit behind on the quota and that, so we'd only get half of Sunday off. But it was good fun. At least we got a little bit of spearing in, on the Sunday. He was always wanting us to take it as a rest day, but everyone just wanted to jump in the water and try to spear something.
So you mentioned air candling and using a syringe with your ears. Can you just fill us in a little bit on what that process sort of looks like? I'm generally familiar with both, but I've never done either.
Well, to be honest, I haven't done it since then. The candle, you just put in a special candle to try and draw out the wax. And then if you've got a very serious buildup of wax, then you can use the syringing to try and get it out. But definitely I'd recommend using some proper, medicated ear drops rather. It was just we're in the middle of nowhere, so, you got to do what you can do.
Yeah, okay. I've noticed in the chemist, like when I've done multiple days diving, the general eardrops are alcohol based, so they dry your ears out, which can give you even more problems. And then the other end of the scale of the eardrops is they're like a steroid based antibiotic one, and then they're not very good for you either because they disrupt the bacterial balance. I was just wondering what guys do when they're out for sort of a week or longer and they have some issues. So it's just interesting hearing from you with your commercial experience what you sort of did to get around it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, these days I have the one with the steroids, and I take that everywhere. And then as soon as I feel something coming, I put a couple of drops, and that quickly it takes away the problem. So if I'm going away for a competition or whatever for a few weeks, I always go to the doctor beforehand and just explain to him that I'm going to be away in another country. It's not going to be easy for me to get the stuff. Can I get a prescription for the eardrops? And I always get it that way, and it hasn't been a problem.
Cool. Yeah, nice. All right, awesome. Well, moving on from there, so you did the commercial diving in Australia, and then you moved over to the UK, and where you've become the British champion for quite a number of years, and you've also represented Great Britain in a whole lot of competitions. Just fill us in a little bit about that experience of moving to the UK and diving the beautiful, clear, warm, tropical waters over there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was a big change, but I was quite pleasantly surprised when I got to do some diving here. There is quite a lot of fish life. There isn't a huge amount of species, but we do have quite a lot of fish life, so that's nice. The diving can be quite interesting, quite challenging. So that was a pleasant surprise.
Where are you doing most of your diving over there?
I normally dive anywhere between Brighton, which is approximately due south of London, to Cornwall. So most of the length along the South English coast.
Okay, all right. And you guys do get some good weather along there. How many days of the year is that sort of diveable?
Well, for me, the season normally starts in about mid-April. As the temperature warms up, and the weather starts improving. So I normally start mid-April when the water temperature is about 8 degrees or so, and then dive through the summer, and the temperature of the water might reach as much as 18, 19 degrees, depending on the place. In some places where it's shallow for a long way out, it can get warmer in summer, and further along in the West Country, it drops off deeper much quicker, so it doesn't tend to get quite as warm as further up the channel. But and then I normally end up diving till around about the beginning of November, and then it's normally the autumn gales and that end up putting an end to the season. It just gets you get lots and lots of wind coming through. It just churns it up, and that's normally the end of the season for me. And then it just gets jolly cold. So I don't handle anything much lower than about 8. I've found this the sort of bottom limit for me. Even, no matter how good the suit is, it's just I can't do less than that.
Turbo starts asking for a 5 mil and anything less than 20, Kevin, so you're doing all right.
Very tender.
Yeah, he's a thin bloke, though, so you can understand.
I'm fit and wiry, all right?
I'm also a pretty thin bloke, so, yeah, I really suffer from the cold. Some of the guys, they dive, a few of the guys dive all the way through winter. I mean, they won't do a lot of diving through winter because there's a lot of wind and that, and there's a lot of visibility. But some of the guys do it, But I'm just not that tough.
No, I've got a bit of meat on them bones, so my extra layer of blubber keeps me pretty good. I remember diving in New Zealand, but 8 degrees is pretty friggin' cold. So you'd have an 8 mil wetsuit on for that, would you?
7 mil. Yeah.
Okay.
For me, I actually use that most of the year, to be honest. I get cold a lot, so yeah, I've got to use the 7 mil most of the year.
Yeah, you got to be comfortable to have a good breath hold and make the most of it.
Do you have to use a weight vest then, or are you still using a weight belt? And
I use a weight belt with about 4 kilos on it, and then a weight vest with another about 4 kilos on it, just to spread the weight out.
Yeah, cool. Had a guy email into the show a little while ago from the Red Sea, and because it's so buoyant there, he was wondering how he could distribute his weight evenly. Do you ever use ankle weights, Kevin?
No, I've tried them, but I haven't persevered with those. For me, doing it this way with a lightweight belt and then the harness, it seems to be okay.
Okay, cool. All right, and we're going to get to some of your competition experience because it's been fairly extensive, and particularly in the last sort of 15 years or so. Before then, though, I wanted to sort of tag back into probably your most memorable fish. Like, what's one of the best or most memorable fish stories you've got?
Probably one of my first, decent fish was one of the most memorable for me. It was shortly after I'd moved to Durban, and it was over a period of about 2 weeks. It was really calm. The water, the inshore in the area where I was diving was really scoured out. So where you'd normally just have the breakers and sand, there was some fantastic reef structure in about 4 or 5 meters of water. Okay. And there was lots of gullies and caves and all of that. And it was fantastic. And there was just so much fish around. And in those days, for every fish I used to see and my dive buddy used to see, we'd miss like about 10 for every one that we managed to land. And I remember over those 2 weekends, we just saw a phenomenal amount of good fish. There was trevally, we saw some jewfish, we saw some what's called heelbeck in South Africa. I think you might call them terraglan or something in Oz. Okay. It's like a jewie with a bit skinnier and with yellow jaws. But
okay. Yep.
Anyway, so it was these phenomenal conditions, and I somehow managed to shoot one of these heelbeck, probably of about 8 kilos. So that for me was a huge achievement. At the time I was still wearing a 2-piece wetsuit with a zip-up jacket with a bit of a jersey underneath the jacket because it fitted so badly. So I was getting flushing everywhere, and and these scuba fins, which were the cheapest white plastic fins with a strap around the back, and the mask was one of these masks with 3 panes of glass, with a huge volume of air. I managed to land this heelbeck. And I was pretty stoked about that.
So what, were you on the bottom laying on the sand? How did you did the fish come to you? What was your how did that play out?
I was sort of like sneaking around on the surface. It's pretty shallow water, So I was sneaking around on the surface, and I sort of came around this bit of rocks. And there he was with a smaller one. So I managed to shoot it through the top and land it like that.
The good old dive bomb.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, nice. Oh, cool. That would have been very memorable, especially with the old school equipment. I think sometimes they're the biggest victories where you're overcoming crap cheap equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, cool.
You need to get yourself a pair of the Noob Spearo edition penetrator freediving blades, Kevin.
Yeah, use the code Noob Spearo to save $20.
I was looking into it.
Don't call us, we'll call you, he says.
We'll get to your dive bag a little bit later on, Kev, but what's you're over there in the UK now. I mean, you can use I wanted to dial in on one of your favourite spearfishing hunting techniques and how you use it. I mean, whether you want to pick a cold water species or some competition techniques that you use, I'm easy. What would be, if you had to pick one technique, what would be your favourite hunting technique?
I think my favourite hunting technique is something I learned because of going and doing some diving in Croatia. Just a bit of background: I'm married to a lovely Croatian woman, so we go to Croatia every summer for the summer holidays, basically. Wow. I normally go for a couple of weeks there, and I found on the first holiday that I was there, Now, the typical terrain, in if you go diving around the Croatian islands, is you have the island, and then the ground just slopes away underwater at an angle maybe sort of on average like 30 degrees. It slopes away into the deep. Okay. Now, if you're just spinning on the surface out at whatever depth, say you want to dive, maybe you want to dive 15 meters. So if you're out, above that, and you do your duck dive and swim down 15 meters and then try lay on the bottom, you basically won't see anything. Because as soon as the fish see your duck dive, see you swimming down, they're gone. So in the first holiday I was there, I was practicing, ways of trying to get the fish, and what I eventually got to use, which is quite a well-known technique in the Mediterranean, is the Aguado. And basically, it's an ambush. And the way I was doing it in Croatia is you start off as close to the side or right against the side if you can, and do your duck dive there, where the waves are like lapping up against the rocks. Try do your duck dive there, and then follow the terrain down, preferably with the sun at your back. Follow the terrain down using the shadows and any terrain that you can to try and disguise your body, and so that you can get into a position where you think there might be fish. Get into that position, and you haven't identified yourself to the fish as being a predator, and they haven't seen you completely or preferably at all. So it's just a way of being able to get into range of the fish, and they're still in some sort of relaxed state. They haven't moved off and disappeared into the great blue. So that's a really fun technique to use. You're on the surface, and you can sort of plan your trajectory, where you want to swim, how you want to use the terrain and the shadows, and to get to where you want to dive. It takes it's a lot of thinking in it as well, and sort of strategy in that. So I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds really strategic. Like there's a lot of thinking that goes into it, whereas some of the dirtier water diving you do, it's really just sort of, you can't see the bottom, so it's just hit and miss, isn't it? Like, so it's interesting hearing that a really good, effective clear water hunting technique. So thanks for laying that process out.
Sure.
What sort of visibility are we talking in Croatia, Kevin?
I would say typically from 20 to 25 meters, something like that.
Yeah, wow.
So you can often see, in Croatia as well, where I dive, there's normally a thermocline. So it's not really deep water diving, because the fish are generally at or above the thermocline level. So that's typically in the time of year that I'm there, which is midsummer. It's typically in around about 15 meters, maybe 10 meters. You don't want you don't want the thermocline too high, because it tends to push the fish up off the reef. And when they're up off the reef and they're in mid-water, they become a lot more difficult than if they're actively, hunting on the bottom. So I found the most success on days when the thermocline was about 15, 16 meters, something like that. Then the areas that I was trying to hunt, the thermocline slightly below that, and the fish are in a more relaxed state.
Okay. What about, are there, in that area of Croatia, are the fish seeing a lot of divers in those areas? Is there a lot of spearfishing pressure? Are they kind of expecting you to be a predator?
Absolutely, yeah. It's sort of like I say, the typical terrain there is that it drops away from the sides of the islands. Very quickly, it drops away into deep water. So you've only got a thin band of diveable area around these islands. So, of course, basically all the good terrain is known. So, there's quite a lot of divers there. So, all the places where you'll get dentex, those dentex, for example, will have all seen divers many times. That's the sort of prize fish. to hunt, which is that's basically what I end up concentrating on when I'm there. Is basically just trying to hunt dentex.
I've seen a YouTube video where a guy uses the technique, the Aguado technique you just described, to perfection, and a huge dentex comes in off the sand, and it's just it was like a beautiful example of the Aguado technique used effectively. Have you got a story of possibly using it effectively yourself over there in Croatia?
Yeah, I mean I've gotten some decent dentex using that.
Oh wow.
The biggest one that I've ever got wasn't really using that technique. It was in the one area that I used to dive where there was a bit of an offshore, bit of reef, sort of offshore big bommy. And then I knew that, on that area there was dentex. So I went down and sort of tucked myself up in between a little ledge and the seagrass. And I could see a big dentex, quite a long way away from me. So I did a maximum breath hold waiting in that, concealed in that little channel that I was in, and doing some soft grunting noises in the throat.
Okay.
And very, very, very slowly he came closer and closer and closer, and right at the end of the breath hold, I took a really long shot and managed to peg him, and he just went mental and went into the seagrass and then into a little hole, and I very gingerly pulled on the line once I'd got to the surface, and out of the seagrass popped this big dentex. So he was 7.3 kilos. So I was really pleased with that. Using the technique I was talking about, doing the Aguado from the side, I've gotten some decent ones up to about sort of 4 kilos, and some amberjack as well. I also got my biggest amberjack was also doing a similar sort of technique. I was looking for dentex actually. And then when I got to the area where I was wanting to look for the dentex, once I've done the ambush, I was lying on the bottom, and in the distance I saw this big head coming my way. So as it approached, there was a bit of a ridge in front of me. As it approached, I slowly lowered myself behind the ridge. And as it got closer and closer, I lowered myself more and more and more until it was, right above me basically, and then shot the thing. And that was about 37 kilos, I think. So that was
wow.
a really nice one. I enjoyed. But yeah, on YouTube there's some great examples of using the technique. Some of the guys in Spain and Italy and stuff like that. So if anyone's interested, they can have a look and find many fantastic examples of it.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying listening to your stories, Kevin, because you've dived sort of quite extensively in a lot of different environments. So, like, just hearing the crossover from like diving in the frigid 8-degree water of the UK to going over to Croatia and diving in 25-meter visibility, sounds like you really enjoy spearfishing in any environment.
I do. I guess I sort of fancy myself as a bit of a jack of all trades but master of none kind of thing. I can do lots of different things. I wouldn't say I'm fantastic at any of it, but I can do these things, and I really enjoy them. So that's sort of the philosophy that I've had.
Yeah, Kevin, I just got one more thing on your Aguado. Some of these guys in the Mediterranean, I mean, they're pulling huge bottom times, really long, and they're quite deep. I just wanted to get an idea for how sort of long your bottom times are, and does any length sort of long length make it more effective? And are you doing any sort of training to keep up those static breath holds on the bottom?
Yeah, I mean, it does help because even if the the total dive time isn't that long, you're still expending quite a lot of energy to do your ambush through the terrain and that. So you do need a reasonable bottom time, and then once you've gotten to where you want to hunt the fish, you might see say for example, if you're hunting dentex, you might see the dentex, and it might take a a fair wait for them to come in and for you to get a shot. I mean, if you do it all perfectly, sometimes I've had it that I've done it. I've gotten to an area, and then you look out over if you've got a bit of a ridge or something in front of you, you look out over that, and then there might be a Dentex right there, and then you can shoot it straight away. So in some cases, it doesn't need a long bottom time, but I think it definitely helps. I mean, for that technique, I'm not normally diving very deep because of the nature of how it is in the area of Croatia at the time of year that I dive in Croatia because of the thermocline. So I'm normally diving shallower than sort of 18 meters. Whereas in other places in the Med, the thermocline works differently, and it might in midsummer be very deep, and the guys are diving very deep. For example, in Greece. Yeah, and in terms of training, I train a bit in winter. I do cycling and stuff like that, and a bit of walking apnea, which helps. So yeah, that sort of keeps me going through the winter time when I can't dive, because each year there's about 5 or 6 months where I just don't dive. So that helps me get through that.
I was going to say Turbo does the same sort of stuff in winter. He bought a bike, but I think he was more carried away with the idea of just having an excuse to wear Lycra.
My bike's got a basket with a 6-pack in the front of it.
Yeah, he's got like the Spartan 300 ab plate stapled onto the front of it. And he chucks a couple of pairs of socks down as well.
Oh, right, eh?
Good lad.
If, like me, you have a friend like Shrek who comes over often and often misses the toilet bowl when he's having a leak, get yourself a copy of Spearing Magazine. Not only is it a great read with full glossy photos, it also is a good way to soak up all that wayward spray. So get your copy of spearingmagazine.com. Spearing Magazine from spearingmagazine.com.
If you like McEwen's Lager and we jammy judges, then Staunch Industries is for you. That's right, apparel for real men. Get that up your cult, staunchindustries.com.
Guys, if you're looking to improve your freediving and spearfishing, a good set of fins is pretty much mandatory. And the best fins going, in our opinion, are the penetrator fins. So get online, get on to penetratorfins.com and check out the full range there of composites and carbon fibre fins. Composites are tough as nails. They're a fantastic fin, and the carbon fibres are the most reactive fin going. We absolutely love them. Can't kill them either. Had them for years. They're still going strong. And the best thing about this is now we have a code for you guys. So if you pump in Noob Spearo at checkout, you'll save yourself $20 on a set of these great fins. Add to that, we now can offer you $25 flat rate shipping internationally. That is absolutely fantastic, and a full international warranty from penetratorfins.com. So there's no reason not to get in and get yourself one of the most important pieces of spearfishing equipment. That is a good set of carbon or composite blades. So get in there now, check out all the great designs, and get yourself a set of penetrator blades.
Good stuff. All right, so okay, let's move on to the next part of the show. Toughest situation. What's the toughest situation you've been in the ocean, and what was the scenario? What actions did you take, and sort of what did you learn from it?
I think one of the standout moments was I was diving with my diving buddy in South Africa, in Cape St. Francis, and the swell was really big that day, and where we were going to dive, there was a long shoreline of rocks, and then on the one side there was a bit of a headland, and then there was a sandy bay. Okay, and so what we had decided to do was to swim out. We found that there's a little gully where you could swim out and just get through the breakers, and then we were going to swim towards the bay and then exit on the sandy beach and get out there. So the swell was big that day, and it was sort of at my maximum that I could punch through the surf and get out. And I just managed to get out, and my dive buddy got out. And then we started diving, and we started shooting some fish and stuff like that. And then as we were diving, the swell picked up, okay, and it's really started cranking. And then we decided, all right, we better head in. So we each had a few fish. So we decided to head in. So we tried to swim to the bay, okay, and we swam and we swam and we swam, and the current had started, and it was pushing us away from the bay. We couldn't actually get around the headland and into the bay. And we swam like flat out for I don't know how long. We must have been going for, I don't know, an hour or something, just trying desperately to make some make some ground and get around into this bay. And eventually we realized we can't, In the other direction, in the direction the current was trying to take us, there was just kilometers and kilometers of rocky coastline, and this surf bashing down on these rocks. So God, how are we going to do this? So anyway, we let the current take us, and we decided to where we were going to try and hopefully find some sort of gully, because when you're behind the surf, you got these big breakers in front of you. You can't actually see the rocks, so you can't really see where there's a safe little gully or anything, because all you can see is the waves in front of you. And we just took a chance and swam in, and luckily we managed to time the break in the sets and reached the shore without serious injury. And I tell you, I actually crawled up onto the beach, and I actually kissed the ground that day. I was so relieved to have reached the shore. I think the sort of the takeaway from that is, you've got to have contingencies where, especially in areas where there's surf or strong currents or both. You've got to have a contingency where you're going to be able to get out.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. A plan B. Yep, definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. Well, we're actually authoring a book at the moment, Kevin, called Noob Spearo's Guide to Shore Dive Spearfishing, and I've emailed out some guys from South Africa and Sydney, and some of these guys that dive the big surf-prone rocky beaches, and it's one point that came through loud and clear, and they've all got these similarly sort of terrifying stories, and I've experienced it myself. It's bloody scary, because know that, like if you're lucky, you might get the arse ripped out of your suit and end up with a big graze on your bum. But, at worst, all sorts of things can happen to you, and you lose half your gear. And so, no, good story. Awesome. The next part of the show is Veteran's Vault. So we're going to discuss with you competitive spearfishing. We're going to get your take on competitive spearfishing. You've had some good results over the years, and we also wanted to discuss spearfishing the UK cod. So if we can start with competitive spearfishing, Kevin, can you just give us a little bit of an overview of your experience with comps, just so listeners might have some sort of idea?
Yeah, I did a couple of comps back in my days in South Africa. I didn't really come anywhere, and then I did spend my time in Australia, and then eventually came to the UK. And started out doing the competitions there, and really enjoyed them. And it took a while. It took me a few years. I mean, the diving in the UK is very different to what I'd ever experienced before. So it took some years to find to learn the different spots and stuff that are commonly dived, to learn the types of fish and the different techniques to get the fish and stuff like that. So it took a few years. I think I won my first British Nationals in 2006.
Wow.
And then I've won it a few times since then. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So with the first time you won it, what was that experience like? What was that over a couple of days, and what was your bag of fish look like? How many species did you shoot? Can you remember?
Yeah, the British Nationals is normally over 4 competitions, weather permitting, of course. On average, it's probably over 3 competitions, and that's spread out over the summer months in different locations. So one weekend you might have it in one location, a few weeks later in another, etc.
Okay.
Yeah, and that first year I won it. It was a very sort of close thing between me and one of the other local guys. I won the first competition with a bag of some mullet and sea bass. And then he did very, very well in another competition of Portland Bull. And I was reasonably close behind. And that was a very mixed bag. I think I had 7 species that day, which is quite a lot of species for the UK, you know. We don't have that many here. But that was I got my first cod that day. There's mullet and bass and red mullet and black bream, a few other fish. So he won that day. And then the last comp, what ended up being the last comp of the year, that was a very difficult one with not many fish coming out in an area which doesn't normally have many fish anyway. And I managed to do well enough to take the title. So that was great. That was my first British national.
Yeah, cool. So that guy, is he a regular rival of yours now, or is he still going?
No, unfortunately not.
Kev broke his spirit.
He sort of stopped with it, the competitive side, which is unfortunate because he was a phenomenal diver. He went on to do really well in some international competitions. Came 10th in the World Championships in Croatia and stuff like that, and then stopped.
Wow,
so that was unfortunate.
Yeah, wow. And you've represented the UK in several comps. You were at the last year's Greece World Champs, weren't you?
Yes, I was. That was an interesting competition. It was.
I was just going to say we saw guys diving to 60 meters, and there was like a lot of injuries, and there was several injuries. Anyway, I don't want to over exaggerate, but it looked like really challenging diving.
Yeah, there was quite a few injuries. It was well known there was going to be quite a deep comp. I went scouting there because with my work I'm limited to how long I can take at any one time really. And be away from work. So I went there for a week in June of last year, and did a little bit of scouting. And you could find fish in sort of 30 to 35 meters. No problem. You could see some fish. They're still pretty difficult to shoot and everything, but there was some fish there. Then we went back for the actual competition, and that sort of zone was almost devoid of fish. We're diving, we were diving constantly. The whole, the scouting and the competition. With myself and one of my other teammates were diving the 30 to 40 meter zone, all constant weight because a lot of the top guys. I think all the top guys were doing variable weight. But in the UK, we can't really practice that because of the type of conditions we have. The dirty water, the current, that sort of thing, and mostly there's a strong tide and that. So it's just not really feasible to be able to practice variable weight and get proficient at it, because I think that's the very important thing as well. You can't just come to a World Championships and try a new technique. Otherwise, you're going to get hurt or worse. So we just stuck with constant weight. And you were just limited to that 30 to 40 meter zone, really. And I got some fish, and I was a little bit disappointed that I didn't do better. I would have liked to have been able to maybe spend a bit longer there and gotten into the variable weight stuff, maybe. Who knows? But it was good. It was fantastically well organized and everything. It was a very dangerous competition, as everyone knows, but they had a couple of medical boats. They had the Navy boat, I think, with a hyperbaric chamber on call nearby. They had a helicopter on call to take people to Athens if need be. So they were very well organized.
Daniel Mann, former guest on the show, had a bit of a chat with you, I believe, and he filmed a fair bit of the event over there. That video's up on YouTube. I might try and link it up in the show notes. But it looks like the, just the way everyone sort of treats spearfishing as a lot different there in Greece. And did you enjoy the experience overall?
I did. It was really good. There's nice guys out there. You learn a lot from these events. It can often be quite a lesson in humility. You go over there. I've been into some of these competitions and gotten little or nothing. So it can be quite a humbling experience. It is difficult. If you're in one of the smaller teams. We basically self-funded, so we got limited time, limited resources, I mean, to start off with, we're not professional spearfishermen, and here in the UK we can only even dive on weekends, for 6 months of the year. So you're competing against guys that are professional spearfishermen. There's a lot of money in it. They've got boats, they've got helpers, they've got people helping to scout, all of that with all the latest electronic gear. But I think you can't get too, if you're going to do these comps, if you're in one of the sort of smaller teams, you can't get too, worried about the inequality of it all. Otherwise, you're just not going to enjoy it. No. So just accept it for what it is. I don't really worry about that sort of thing. It is what it is, and I just go along and do the best I can with the means available and try and enjoy it.
Yeah, cool. What are the that's Greece, but back in the UK, you're doing one of your club comps. What are some of the differences to just wreck diving? Like, how would you go about winning one of these comps? What's the strategy? What are the little things you do differently just to a normal everyday dive?
Well, I think, with competition strategy, a lot of it is you've got to think what's going to happen when there's a whole bunch of other blokes out there all trying to shoot fish. In our local competitions, we might have 30 guys or something. In an international, like in Greece, there was 75 divers or something, and probably about 85 boats. So that does have an effect on what's going to happen with a fish. So if you can try and have a strategy where you can get fish through the competition, not just, often in these competitions, especially in the internationals, the very beginnings, is critical, before everything gets disturbed. But if you can have a strategy where you can get some fish going through it. In the local comps, I normally try and go out a bit wider than the other guys to get some space, go out a little bit deeper than the other guys will be going, just so that I can be by myself. Maybe it's not even as good a ground or anything, but be by yourself and try and pick up some fish.
All right. With guys that are just sort of get interested in sort of getting started in comps, possibly over there in the UK, it's their first comp. How would you advise them to go about approaching it? Is scouting something that you do even for a local comp?
Yeah, absolutely. I try and always go and do at least one little look at the place, preferably with the same sort of tide that the competition's going to be going. That's going to be happening in the competition. So you're diving the area in the same, either whatever, incoming, outgoing, high tide, whatever. So you're diving it at the same, and then try and learn a few spots. And then one of the things I always think with competition, is just try and keep going right till the end. You never know what's going to happen. I've had many competitions where I've gotten almost nothing through most of the hours of the competition, and then you keep trying, and then right at the end, you never know, you can come into some fish and then pull out a good result. And I've won some of the competitions like that, with getting almost all my fish right at the end. So
nice.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen. Another story from in 2008 in my first World Championships. It was in Venezuela. And on day one, I didn't do well at all. As it started, we were all racing off to a spot, to our various spots. And just as the boat was slowing down, my weight belt snapped. So I've never had happened before. But yeah, in my first world champs there, my weight belt snaps as we're slowing down to jump in the water and start fishing. So I had another weight belt with like about 2 kilos of weight on it. So I quickly, that was just, supposed to be a second weight belt for when diving really shallow. So I quickly put that around me, shoved some weights up my wetsuit jacket, jumped in the water, and swam to the spot where I had a fish marked, and there was already a spear in it. So yeah, I got out. Eventually, I managed to get one fish, and that was the end of day one. All I had was one fish, and then on day two, so we're all assembling at an assembly point, all the boats around these islands, and all of a sudden, all the boats started heading out in different directions, and I thought that was the start of the competition, and so did a lot of people. So we all go heading off full steam into the distance, and I jump in the water, and I think I might have done a dive or not, but then the organizer's boat came up and told everyone that no, the competition hadn't actually started, so we had to all go back to the starting point, and then. And then there was a lot of arguing and everything. And then they decided that all the people who had moved out from the start-off point without the actual official start gun having fired would get a 1-hour time penalty. So I was one of those people. Yeah. So by then, there'd been so much delay that they had reduced the 6-hour competition to 4 hours. And then for myself and however many other people, there's about 15 of us, we had a 1-hour time penalty. So we only got to dive the last 3 hours of the now 4-hour competition.
Oh, man.
So we had to stay in this little bay on our boats for an hour. And I thought, well, it can't get any worse than this. So I went and swam to the shore with my lunch and sat on a rock and had my lunch. I thought, well, this is my first world championship. I'm sitting on a rock while other guys are all diving, it cannot get worse than this. And then, it just, there was then no pressure or anything like that, it can't get worse. So you think, well, I'm just going to go out and have some fun. So, after the hour had passed, we were allowed to go. So I jumped back on the boat and off we went to the far edge of the area. And, there was this area where there was, loads of other divers, and the current was really strong. So we're doing one dive drift, jump in, do one dive to the bottom, hopefully shoot a fish, the boat pick you up, and then you go back up current again and do a drift over this area. And I started finding some fish and finding what sort of terrain they were liking, and I started increasing the rate and ended up getting a decent catch, and it was quite a good catch for the second day, and that bumped me up to, I think, 13th overall. So I was really pleased with that. But
that's phenomenal.
The point is that you got to keep going and stay positive, even if you're not getting fish. So same like I was mentioning in the local comps, if you're not getting fish, just keep trying until the end, because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. That's a good point. I noticed even on some of our trips out on the bay, when I'm just throwing fish over the side all day, I often come back and Shrek hasn't shot anything, mate. And he's just got his hands in a big packet of Doritos, and he's just like 130 kilo baby sulking in there, smashing chips in, and you got to blow some wind in his sails and get him back in the water. And occasionally he'll go and shoot a good mowong or something like that, and he'll be all good, and the bottom lip sucks back in.
I looked exactly like Kevin, just sitting on the rocks, despondent. Despondent.
What do
while
they call
everyone
that
else is...
when you're eating out of sadness or whatever? What's that called?
I don't know, man. Like, you're telling the story. All good. Okay, any sort of final tips for guys wanting to do competitions, Kev? Because I think we want to move on and check out the UK cod story.
No, I think that's about it, eh? The real tips. Yep.
No, there's some really good stuff in there anyway, particularly about scouting and replicating the conditions that the comp's going to be in particular. That really stood out for
your own
me.
area.
All right, so let's chat a bit about the UK cod. So, what's the actual species? Do you know the scientific name and It's not like what we call it's not a groper species, is it?
No, I don't. But yeah, it's not one of it's not one of the gropers. It's the Atlantic cod. We get them. They're all across the top of the North Atlantic. I think the English South Coast is sort of towards the southern limit of their range. So we don't get a lot of them here. It's not it's nowhere near as much as like in Norway and places like that, where you get a much bigger quantity of the fish and they get much bigger.
Okay.
But we do get some here in various places. And yeah, I really enjoy it. It's quite challenging because there's a bit of the depth aspect to hunting them. Because I enjoy, the hunting aspect of spearfishing and also to some degree the freediving aspect of it. And that can be quite a challenge here in the UK. You got the strong tides, you've got the cold water, you need a thick suit, lots of weight around you. It's mostly not too clear. So it's quite a challenge doing some of the depths. We're not doing like ridiculous depths or anything, sort of 20, 25, maybe 30 meters at most. But it's quite a challenge in these sort of conditions.
Okay, maybe just for illustration purposes, what's probably one of the better cod you've taken over there, and how did that sort of hunt work out?
Well, the biggest cod I've ever got wasn't a very typical hunt. It wasn't very deep at all. I was just looking under a ledge, and he was tucked in there, and then the cod it moved out and away, and I sort of lowered myself down against the rock, hoping he'd come back, and he did, and he came back, and I managed to put a shot in him.
Cool.
I was very pleased with that. That was about just under 20 pounds. So I was really pleased with that.
It's a
but
tank.
The sort of more typical hunt would be we dive in areas where we typically look for crabs, basically. Cod love, almost all the cod that I've shot, when you gut them, if you squeeze their guts out, just a whole lot of crabs pop out. That's what they seem to love eating. So we like to hunt in areas where there's the food, which is the crabs, and shelter. I guess most like many fish, they like food and shelter. They like a good bit of somewhere to hide, and a source of food. So in some places there's mussel beds, or there were. They sort of died back a couple of years ago, and those mussel beds were almost infested with these little dark brown crabs. And then if there was any structure around anywhere near the mussel beds, with a bit of a crack or something for the fish to hide in, you'd often get a cod there. Nowadays, since the mussels have sort of been destroyed by by too much suspension in the water over one of the winters a couple of winters ago. We go to other places where there's still good structure, and they're still finding their source of crabs. And that, to be honest, they're not the hardest fish to shoot. When in terms of if you find them, they're quite slow and quite curious. But a lot of the challenge is in trying to find them. They're not that plentiful.
Okay.
You got to sort of know your stuff. Normally, put in a bit of depth and that, and hopefully you can find them. And typically, I'll do quite a bit of searching on the bottom. So you go down. If you can't find any good structure, then swim along the bottom and try and find some structure that you think might have a cod grounded. And then if you see some structure, then sort of lower down and lower yourself down and stop, and often they'll come in.
Are they a schooling fish, or do they shoal up? Will you see 5 or 6 on one of these structures at a time? Or are they more just like our groper, sort of just a single cod in a hole, or what's the story there?
Yeah, I mean, supposedly they do school up over deeper water. I've normally just seen them singly, or maybe 2 at a time in times when there's a lot of cod. It varies each year, the amount of cod, because each year different year groups and different amounts of cod move into the grounds. But yeah, normally it's just single fish, and normally we'd see them either near good structure or sometimes tucked right up in a hole.
Right. And are they territorial? Can you use that against them to shoot them? Or
yes, I mean they don't tend to. If you take a cod from around a rock or in a hole, it takes a while for that hole or that little area to get repopulated. So I think they are reasonably territorial when they've moved in. So yeah, you do need to hunt over quite a large area and really search for them.
All right, I'm going to ask probably the most important question, Kevin, and atypical of me. What do you? How do they go on the plate? And and what's your personal cooking technique for them?
They're pretty good. The nice thing about them is it's got a really white flesh. So I find they freeze very well. So the other big species for shooting over here is the sea bass. If they're fresh, I prefer the sea bass. But the sea bass I don't find freezes very well. It gets a bit of a bitter taste from the blood. So you've got to cut all the red meat out of it, I find. I'm a bit fussy like that. And then I really don't like freezing them for long. Whereas the cod, you can fillet it up, put it in the freezer, and quite a few months later it'll still taste great. So that's a big bonus of the cod. I normally freeze them up and then go through the bass first, and then later on in the year at least I can still eat fish, and that's the cod.
Yeah, cool. All right. Yeah, normally when we do these sort of deep dives on a single species, Turbo will ask for the Latin name of the fish, and I'll ask how you cook them. We've clearly got different priorities, but
and body types.
And looking at us, you'd probably guess what.
Oh, you fry them, Kevin?
Yeah, we normally fry them up. Yeah. They're pretty good fried.
Shrek loves a good fry.
Sometimes I make a bit of a curry out of them.
What about you do a good pommy batter? The pom.
No.
You're going to live for your life. I reckon you're going to struggle to make 40 at this rate. Seriously.
The poms love a good battered fish, though. They do it so well, too.
I fry them au natural.
Okay. All right.
Oh, you've lost him, mate.
Kevin's off. He's like, all this guy wants to talk about is eating fish.
If there's not bulk calories involved, mate, he's not interested. It's 30 degrees here, but he's still eating for a winter. It's ridiculous.
He's got to go into hibernation soon, so it's all good.
All right.
Hey guys, today's Veterans Vault is brought to you by our ebook, 99 Tips to Get Better at Spearfishing. It's actionable information from more than 40 interviews with spearfishing experts from around the world. Turbo, what do you like about the book, buddy?
Mate, I love it that it's called 99 Tips to Get Better at Spearfishing, but there's well over 99 tips in there. Some estimated at around 1,000 or 1,500 tips.
I love your estimation. I like the fact that it's just actionable information to improve your spearfishing out of sight on the next dive.
Yep, absolutely. It's the best value for money spearfishing book on the market. So get on Amazon.com and pick yourself up a copy.
99 tips to get better at spearfishing. Thanks, guys.
If you're anything like my mid-30s friend Shrek, then you probably look like you're dressing out of the 90s still. I've just got to say right now, a big thank you to Staunch Industries, who sent us a couple of shirts for Shrek in double XL. He looks bloody mint, and he's not an embarrassment to be around. So if you're looking for some spearfishing apparel, check out Staunch Industries. I think their website's staunchandustries.com. Check them out. Their stuff's absolutely excellent. They've got some great designs.
All right. So we covered off competitions. We've had a good look at cod and most importantly how they go on the plate. Next part of the show is the funniest thing you've experienced out spearfishing. I've experienced a few funny moments with Turbo. What about you, Kev?
A few funny moments. I think one that stands out is when I was over your way in Australia. One of the days it was really rough weather, and it was my turn to drive the tinny for the day. And we're doing the troker shells, and I was riding the boat, and there was 3 divers I was looking after, I think, and I was, they work right in the shallows, and they'd call the boat in, and I'd have to bring the tinny in and pick up the shells, throw it in the crates, and then get back out again into a bit deeper water. And this day, with strong wind and everything, and it was quite rough, and I kept coming in to collect the shells, and quite a bit of water was coming in over the sides. And as you know, those tinnies aren't self-draining or anything, so I was starting to take on quite a bit of water. And I did that, and we were really getting heavy with the shells. I think we had 3 full crates, so that's 70 kilos each. So it's about 200 kilos odd of shells. And then I was picking up the divers, and then the last guy to finish called me in, and he was basically standing in the shallows, and called the boat in. So I had to go right in shallow, and there wasn't a big swell or anything. It was probably a couple of foot or something. The waves were standing up, and I picked him up, and I tried to turn the boat around, and I started going out to punch through the waves, and just one too many waves came over the side, and the boat just went down, and so I was left on the surface, and the boat just went down to about, I don't know, it's probably about 4 meters deep or something, and it was on the bottom. So I was so embarrassed about that. And then I looked down. I didn't have a mask, obviously, or anything, because I was a tinny driver. I looked down, and there's the guys. They're in the boat and pretending that they're driving it, with their hand on the tiller arm and everything, pretending they're driving the tinny while it's on the bottom. Oh dear! So I earned a couple of choice nicknames after that. They called me Captain Nemo or just the sinker.
Captain Nemo, that's good.
But I was lucky. I didn't have to drive the tinny much after that. The skipper of the boat said, no, someone else can do it. So I just got to dive.
You're right, sinker. Leave it to one of the other boys. Good stuff. The Aussies are good for cracking a few jokes too, aren't they, Kevin? You would have experienced that big time.
Oh, yeah, very much, very much. Oh, it's good humour working on the boats with them now. Very good.
All right. So, what's in your dive bag? Head to toe. What's
You're diving in the UK, mate. What's the equipment you're using? What does it look like?
Right. Well, from head to toe, Technisub low volume mask, Technisub micro mask. I use a Polar Sub made to measure suit. You've got to have a good fitting suit here. Normally 7 mil jackets, often 5 mil pants. I use Spear carbon fins. In the UK, I only use two types of gun, 2 lengths of gun. I use carbon reel guns, 75 centimeters and 90 centimeters. So if it's dirty, I use the 75. If it's clean, I use the 90. That's it. I'm pretty simple. So just the 2 guns, and then I use a buoy, one of those Sevlor Dive Hunter buoys. They're quite popular in Europe. The guys here will know about them. I presume they're probably not that popular in Oz, but it's one of these buoys that, it's basically a board. Looks like a little boat.
Okay.
So I use
like
one of those.
Banks board.
Yes. It is similar to that, but it's This one's inflatable, so it's really light and everything.
Okay.
Yep. And because the swims over here are quite a long way. The place closest to my house, it's about 2 kilometers each way. So you swim out 2 kilometers and then start diving, and then you've got to swim 2 kilometers back. So it makes a difference having a board, and then you can also have your water and your sun cream or whatever you want on there, and also put the fish on the board because of the current, to try and make it a bit easier to swim. So I use one of those boards a lot in this country. I also use a drop weight on the float line rather than having the float line going to a gun or anything like that. So I use a real gun. I swim out to my spot and throw the drop weight and then dive around it. Because if you got your float line attached to your gun, you can't really be very stealthy and sneak around the structure or anything like that. So I just use a real gun and swim around with that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that board you mentioned, we interviewed Grant Laidlaw over in Scotland recently, and he does something similar because of the long swim. So it's interesting to see the parallels over there in your neck of the woods. Cool.
Yes, I did actually. I listened to his interview. It was very good. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Yeah. He's a bloody character, old Grant. So, it's good stuff. All right, next part of the show, Spearo Q&A. This used to be Fast 5 Facts for News, but we've changed it up a bit.
Never approved this.
So, what's the single best piece of advice you've ever been given while spearfishing?
I'm racking my brains. I can't actually think of any great advice.
Okay. Yeah,
so we'll have to move on.
Yeah, it sounds like you've dived with a lot of guys like Turbo, so he's got nothing good to say.
So I just saw something shiny.
So, okay, well, who's been the most influential person or people in your spearfishing? Who did you start off sort of, who
was your mentor?
Copying or learning off, yeah?
Well, I think the most influential person is definitely my dive buddy. I started diving with him 20 years ago, and we still dive together here in the UK today.
Oh, wow.
And we push each other and encourage each other. We both enjoy a bit of the sort of deeper spearfishing. So, we sort of
You've got a
egg each
hardcore
other
bromance.
on and stuff like that. Yeah, he's a good free diver. I enjoy going with him. It's also quite competitive between the two of us. We have a 2-pound bet every time we go diving. Whoever gets the best fish of the day, the other guy's got to give him 2 pounds. So there's a bit of rivalry there. And also on special events, maybe on just some competitions, or if we're away somewhere, we do the penalty limoncellos. I don't know if you guys know limoncello, the drink.
Yeah, I know it. I've had some great times in Italy on that stuff. Oh.
It's vile stuff, I think. Yeah. But it actually, this actually comes from Italy. We were with a good Italian friend of ours, and we decided that whoever on the day shot the best fish got to have a nomination for someone else to drink a limoncello. And then at the end of the holiday, we tallied these all up, and we each dished out our penalty limoncellos to the other guys. And
that sounds like a messy day.
That's become also a bit of a standard between us. That on special events we'll be dishing out penalty limoncellos.
Good stuff. All right. So what's your buddy's name there? You got to dob him in.
Yes, his name's Ross Gilfillan.
Okay. And he's a South African as well, is he, originally?
Yeah. I met him in Durban when I first moved there in '97.
Right.
We were sort of, I was busy kitting up on the shore, and saw this guy, and he was kitting up on the shore. So we got chatting, and we decided to swim out together. So we swam out. We were both, pretty new at it, very new at it, really, and hadn't shot much and didn't know too much about it. And so swam out, and he managed to shoot a small little barracuda, sea pike as they call them there. And he said the way he had got it was to swim down on the bottom, to the bottom, and then swim as far as he could along the bottom, and then he managed to shoot this fish. So we thought, wow, this is the technique to use for spearfishing. So we were going down and then swimming fast along the bottom as far as we could to try and find a fish.
Yeah.
So things developed from there. But So I've been diving with him ever since. That's 20 years now.
20-year bromance. That gives something Turbo and I to aim at.
Hey, that's a real stayer.
All right,
What do you-
last
what do you
question,
guys
Kevin.
want?
Then we're probably 7, 6, something like that.
Man, have we had some blow-ups.
6 or 7 years, that's not bad.
Crackers.
Mate.
Thankfully, there's never much competition, Kev. He knows I'm always going to outshoot him. It's
He's
just,
taking the kids, I'm taking the house next time.
all right, last question. Last question, Kev. So, if you had to start out all over again, what would you do differently?
I don't know. I don't think I'd do anything differently. I mean, it's been a long, hard journey for me. You know, I suppose like anyone, there's so much to learn. I still feel like I've got a huge amount still to learn. So still very much feel like I'm on the steep slope of the learning curve. So I'm still enjoying it. But I wouldn't do anything differently as such. It's good to learn.
I think
things,
it's part of
sometimes the hard way.
It's part of what makes it such an appealing sport. You're always learning something and pushing yourself. So awesome,
Exactly.
awesome chatting with you today, Kev. Look, if listeners want to come and find you somewhere, Kev, where's the best place they can do that?
Well, I do have a YouTube channel and a Vimeo channel. I have some videos on there. I'm not overly prolific. I sort of put 1 or 2 videos a year on. Normally, I do a review of my highlights of the year, and I put that on YouTube and Vimeo. They're reasonably long because I try and include a little bit of the. You know, I'm not interested in videos where all you just see is kill shot after kill shot after kill shot. For me, that's got no appeal. So I try and show at least a little bit of the hunt. I mean, you've got to have a balance between showing the entire dive, which, you know, could be 2-3 minutes long, and with just the bit of action at the end, and just doing kill shots where you're not seeing any of the hunting. So I try and find a bit of a balance with showing some of the hunting and not putting the audience to sleep, you know. So
Okay, and your go-to soundtracks on there, are you using like some old school Afrikaans music on there?
No. But I might do in future. If you're putting in a request, I might.
No worries. I'll link up your Vimeo and YouTube channels in there. What about on social? You on? You want people to come and join you on social anywhere, or are you a recluse
I'm on
like
Facebook.
Turbo?
I'm on Facebook, so anyone's welcome to join me on there. And also, you know, if people are in the UK, I very much recommend that they join a club. We've got quite a few clubs here. A lot of the guys who are, you know, coming over, they join the London club, which is I'm involved in the London club, but there are other clubs, and you know, they should also join the British Spearfishing Association. Support us there. So
cool.
For any of the local divers, please join and take part.
Cool. All right. Well, send us through some of those links, and I'll put that all on your show notes page. So if people just search Kevin Daly, they can come and find you at noobspearo.com and find the links to all those clubs and your videos on there. So any parting piece of advice for our listeners, Kevin?
No, just stay safe and enjoy it.
Cool. Well, awesome talking with you. I was really happy you made time for us, and I hope the rest of your evening in the bed and breakfast over there is pretty pleasant.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's getting quite late.
Thanks for chatting with us so long.
I'm going to go to sleep soon.
Cool.
Thanks, Kevin. Have yourself a limoncello and off to bed.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, mate.
Shrek, you know me, I love to pretend to read. And even more than that, I love glossy images. And that's exactly what you get with Spearing Magazine. It's our favourite spearfishing magazine from Jeremy Gamble, our guest on the Noob Spearo podcast. It's an absolute ripper, and he's got a great deal for listeners here in Australia.
That's right. You can get the whole back catalogue for $60 Australian. If you're down south, if you're down under, and we'll include the South Africans in that
Absolutely.
as well.
Love our
You-
South
you can,
mates.
you can email Jeremy sales@spearingmagazine.com and secure the whole back catalogue for $60. Jeremy put this together just to help us people down here overcome the cost of shipping. So get hold of 19 issues of this top quality magazine for $60.
Wow, what a great episode. Big thank you to Kevin Daly for coming on the show. I think wherever you are in the world, you would have learnt something today, picked something up from Kevin. He's an absolute gem and a wealth of knowledge. So a big thank you to Kevin Daly and a big thank you to my mate Shrek for that interview. He does a great job there at Anchor and he just doesn't get enough praise around here. So thanks to Shrek Daly and Kevin Daly for making this episode fantastic. I want to use the pun daily double. It was a daily double. All right, there we go. It's out of the way. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's episode, guys, as always, get on iTunes, leave us a review. We love that. Helps us rank higher, helps people find out about us. But we'll go one further today. If you've got a mate that loves spearfishing, let them know about the show. Just one mate, even if you've got to put it on that little app on their iPhone to help them out. If they struggle with technology like Shrek does, then help them out. Get them interested in the show. We love new listeners. And if you have any questions or you want to dob someone in who's an absolute cracker of a Spearo that knows their stuff, send me an email, turbo@noobspearo. I'll reply to that and we'll get them on the show as well. So that concludes today's episode. However, next fortnight we have another cracking episode in front of us. We're going to talk to a guy over there in South Africa, Renee Nell. Pretty sure I got that pronunciation correct. And we talked to him about his brush with a great white shark. So we're going to learn what it's about, what it's like to be attacked by a great white shark and live. And we've got some, he sent us the footage of that, his ordeal, and it's absolutely fantastic. So stay tuned. Next week, we're going to visit South Africa and talk to Renee Nell all about being bitten by a great white shark and surviving. I mean, this guy was on the beach with gashes and wounds all over him, laughing. I mean, he's one tough guy, so it's a fantastic episode. Thanks for listening, guys. Just remember, reviews, tell a mate about the show, get involved with the Noob Spearo, and we'll talk to you next fortnight. As we all know, every good Spearo needs a good supplier of good equipment. Now, you can find that good equipment at spearfishing.com.au. That's right, our show sponsor, Adreno. Their online store can be found at spearfishing.com.au. And if you use the code NoobSpearo at checkout, you'll save yourself $20 on all purchases over $200. So get online and check those guys out.